Hey guys, welcome to my channel and great SolarWinds and GNS3 integration course, which is for free. So before we start, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications and like the video to get every new update almost every day. And if you haven't watched the previous video, please click here to watch this video first. So before we start, I should mention that when you configure your diagram here, your router 1 and router 2, and of course your switch, you should type WR at the end to save the configuration. So in today's lesson, we're going to install our SolarWinds NPM server. So we don't need this lab for now, and we'll say yes. We want to close this lab and we'll go to the VMware workstation here. And simply we'll say create new virtual machine. We want to install Windows Server 2019 as a SolarWinds network performance monitoring course. So we'll use custom and next, and here we'll use the default option, which is hardware compatibility list. The latest version is going to be 16 as it is shown here, and we'll say next. And again here we're gonna use our Windows or whatever OS that you want. This is the sample of adding new virtual machine. And later I'm going to import it because I don't want to use this option. But in case if you don't know how to install a new virtual machine, Windows virtual machine, to install NPM, this is the great step-by-step, and you should do exactly like me. And next, and here you should say, for example, Windows Server, and this is the path. Again, I recommend you to put it on the folder in your SSD disk or whatever disk that you have. For example, we'll click on Windows or things like that, and okay, and next. And here number of processor 2 and 1 core per processor is 1. That would be okay. You can say, for example, 4, but don't make it 1 because you will face the low speed. So let's say 2 default. And for memory, I highly recommend you at least give it 6 GB, because if you add only 4 GB and simple installation, again you will see the server is slow and you cannot in some cases browse it, and it takes more than 10 minutes to be ready to log in after you rebooted that server. So let's say 6 GB. And here we'll use the default. Later on maybe we need to change it to connect it to our GNS3 diagram. So we'll say next, and here we'll use the default option for IO control, and this is the SCSI disk which is recommended. And here let's say, for example, 50 GB. That would be okay for installing NPM, or if you want to continue the course to install NCM or NPM, I highly recommend you increase to 70 GB in case that you don't running out of space. And we'll click on next. And here is the disk file or virtual machine disk name, which is the VNDK file. Next, and here we'll click on finish. So, and here we'll click on power on this virtual machine. And from now, the process of installing, as you can see, this is ESXi. I just wanted to show you how you can boot up your virtual machine, no matter is ESXi or a Windows Server. From now, you should install a Windows Server. Just next, and provide the disk for installing the operating system. And at the end, you will have Windows Server 2019 installed. So let's power off this virtual machine, and let me delete this one because I'm having my own template. I just want to install my Windows Server from the template. So what is template here? You just install Windows or ESXi or whatever operating system, and you configure it. You go there adding the IP address, the host name, or whatever you want, and then we'll go to the here in snapshot, take a snapshot. As you can see, I took the snapshot with the label template, And then I will go to setting in the option and advanced. You should check this box, enable template mode to be used for cloning. So that's great. That means I can easily right click anytime. If you want to deploy the new virtual machine less than 2 or 3 minutes with your SSD disk, of course with the SATA drive maybe it will take 5 or 10 minutes. But here I'm gonna say clone, and here we'll say next, and here we should use the snapshot that we already took for that template, which is Windows Server 2019, and I'm going to create a full clone because I need the full installation of my Windows Server 2019. Again, here let's say SolarWinds NPM or Network Performance Monitor, and here we'll say browse. We'll go to our SSD drive, and here let's say SolarWinds Server. This is the path to install the new operating system, and we'll say finish. And now as you can see, the process of cloning my template is start, and it takes about less than 3 minutes, and it will be ready and very easy, the fresh installation of Windows Server 2019. So the process of creating full clone is finished. We'll say close. And here we can see SolarWinds NPM. First off, we should say upgrade to the new hardware compatibility list. We'll use the latest version, and we'll say alter this virtual machine and finish. And here let's say only 6 GB for simple installation, and 2 number of processor, and the core is 1 per each processor. So that's great. And here for hard disk, I'm going to add another hard disk because this is the template. I want to say expand here on the hard disk. Let's say 70 GB, and OK. And now we should power on this virtual machine. Simply right click and we'll say start now, and we'll close out of these template windows. So this is the first time my Windows Server for installing SolarWinds NPM is boot up, and it may need 1 or 2 times to reboot this virtual machine to completely install and ready for you actually to install SolarWinds Server. So this is the first time we'll accept the country region and the keyboard layout. Next, and accept the license agreement, and we'll type the new password here and finish. And now as you can see, the Windows Server is ready to install our Orion NPM server. So we'll log into that Windows Server. This is the first time, as you can see, the fresh installation. And as you can see, it will detect my network here. We'll say yes, and we'll close out of Server Manager here. So now is the time to actually copy this file, SolarWinds Orion NPM version 2019.4, which is the evaluation and the offline installer. So we'll select this file and simply drag it to the Windows Server to copy it from your host, which is your computer. As you can see, this is my computer, to the VMware Workstation virtual machine. And this is not the latest version. Let me show you. The latest version is going to be version 20.1. 20.2.4 offline installer. You can download it from SolarWinds official website, or I will give you the link in the description. You can download it. You can download even the latest version, which is now 220.2.4, and simply you should right click on the SolarWinds Orion installer and click on Run as Administrator. But I'm going to use the version 2019.4, which hopefully there is no difference in the interfaces, just some security hotfix or files for a new version. So simply we'll right click here and we'll say Run as Administrator. But before we go further, let me actually change my host name here. We'll say Advanced, and in the computer name here, let's say SolarWinds SRV or things like that, which is server, and OK. And I again recommend you to go to the firewall control panel or firewall.cpl and turn off the firewall. And to apply the host name, we need actually to reboot this virtual machine again. So when we log in back again, I highly recommend you, before you start installing SolarWinds, right click and say New, take a snapshot. You should have the snapshot, let's say fresh installation or things like that. That means if you see any problem during the installation, you can get back to the fresh installation and again try again to install SolarWinds. So that's great. And one thing I should do actually to increase my disk drive, disk mgmt.msc, as you saw here, I just right click on the virtual machine and increase the disk to 70 gigabyte. That's great. But here, actually, maybe you don't need to do that, because you will install the new operating system just by adding the ISO file, or maybe you don't need to use template. So in my C partition, I'm going to right click and say extend volume. Which volume? This free space, which as you can see, it's automatically selected. And next and finish. And now we have 70 gigabyte for my C Windows partition. So that's great. And now is the time to double click on this file, and the file is going to be extracted, and then we're going to install SolarWinds network performance monitoring software in this server. So the wizard is going to install Visual C++ and this installation files and .NET framework, and then we should reboot the server and continue the installation. So as you can see, the installer needs the server to be rebooted to complete installing .NET framework component. So we'll say yes, and we'll wait for the server to boot up again. So we'll log in back again to our server. And let me use maximum size here. And we'll minimize server manager because we don't need it, and we should wait for the wizard again to extract and continue the installation of our SolarWinds network performance monitoring server. So here we are on the SolarWinds setup wizard. So for the lab purpose or practicing this course or any course for SolarWinds server, I highly recommend you that you choose the lightweight installation, which is to use the SQL Server Express locally, and the database size limited to 10 gigabyte, and it's going to be evaluation product. But for your production environment, the only option that you have is standard installation, which required local or external SQL server, and the database size is going to be limited by the storage. As far as you have the storage, you can have the massive database in your SolarWinds server and require for the production environment, as you can see here, and we have the add a scalability engine here. So for the production installation, you need this one. If you practice this course and you want to step by step install your SolarWinds server like me in your production environment, I highly recommend you use this option. But later on, you will need SQL server to be installed locally or external SQL server, which means you should add a SolarWinds database to your existing SQL server in your production environment. By the way, I teach how you install a SQL server and this version of a standard installation in my course, which is SolarWinds Network Performance Monitoring Complete course. There you can see how you can install and configure SolarWinds for your production environment. But don't worry, this free course, again, it will teach you how you can configure and monitor your production devices. So for the lab purpose, or if you want to test SolarWinds before purchase the license, I highly recommend you use this one. So we'll click on a lightweight installation and we'll click on next. And we should actually pass this way, which is a network performance monitor. Of course, you can select, for example, a NetFlow traffic analyzer or network configuration manager or NCM module, but it's going to connect through the internet to the SolarWinds online servers and download the installation media. But as we have the offline, that means it is ready. We can install the network performance server from this file completely, and the size, as you can see, around 4 gigabyte. That means we don't need to go through the internet. So we'll click on next. So here we have the warning. It's recommend you to increase the memory here for your server. As you can see here, we added only 6 gigabyte. Even for the lightweight version, it will need more than 6 gigabyte, but that's okay. We'll say next. And we'll accept the terms of the licensing. And now the installation is begin actually to installing SolarWinds Network Performance Monitoring. It will take about less than 15 minutes to be installed based on your hard disk or your hardware resources that you have in your server here. As you can see, this is SSD disk and it will take less than 10 minutes. But for SATA drive or SCSI, maybe it will take more, something around 15 or 20 minutes. So we'll wait for the installation to be completed and I will get back to you as soon as we finish the installation. So now, as you can see, we're completing the Orion configuration wizard, and by the option launch Orion web console selected, we're gonna click on finish. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to install Mozilla Firefox or Google Chrome. I highly recommend you install Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox to browsing your SolarWinds Network Performance server. So that's great, and we'll close out of this window, which is Internet Explorer, and we'll double click on Mozilla Firefox here. So simply we'll type the IP address or the host name of the server, which is going to be a localhost IP address with the port 8787. And for the first time, you should confirm the new password for your Orion server. So this is Orion web page console here. Simply we'll type the password and we'll confirm it and we'll say okay. For the lab environment, we can accept to save the password, but for your production, it's not recommended to save the password on your Mozilla Firefox or Google Chrome. So this is the fresh installation of our Orion server. Now that we saw how we can easily install the Windows server and then install the SolarWinds NPM on VMware workstation, in the next lesson, I'm going to connect this server to the GNS3 lab. That will help you actually to add the GNS3 devices, which is going to be switches, routers, firewall, ESXi, or whatever that you add in your GNS3 lab to the Orion server, and you can easily enable SNMP on those devices and add them to the SolarWinds NPM server.